So hi everyone, I'm Gretchen Hughes. I am your Rutgers account manager. I'll just take us through, Courtney, if you want to just put us onto the agenda and then meet the team. Perfect. So who's with you today? We'll just go to the next slide. So I'm Gretchen, the Rutgers account manager. I'll put my contact information in the chat. So I'm your main point of contact for everything that Turnitin has. Today we'll be going over Feedback Studio, Gradescope, and Examsoft. So happy to help with that after this call. Courtney Nicolaides is your customer success manager. She'll also be working with you after this call. And Howard Fooksman is our senior Gradescope solutions engineer who'll be taking over the Gradescope piece. So with that, I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A portion, but Courtney, I will let you take it away.
Thank you, Gretchen, and thank you very much to all of you who have decided to share some of your afternoon with us, and thank you very much for the invitation. So our mission at Turnitin is to ensure the integrity of global education and meaningfully improve learning outcomes. And today we'll be talking about how four of our products can empower different stakeholders to help work towards meaningful learning outcomes. So we will start with Draft Coach and Feedback Studio. And this is the story of someone very near and dear to me. This is the story of my brother. Now, that's not really his picture, but I would like to tell you his story so that we can really focus on how Draft Coach as a formative tool and Feedback Studio as a formative tool is supporting his original writing journey towards not only reaching the expectations that his professors have for him, but also his life goals. So Will is decided to leave university and help my family build the family business. And he traveled all around the world and then created his own business in the agricultural sector, setting up farms in Japan, helping to establish a racetrack for horse racetrack in South Korea. And then after traveling the world and being a businessman, he came home to Los Angeles and said, now 35 years old, decided to go back to university and finish his university studies in psychology and move on towards his PhD. Now, Will is highly competent as a businessman, in many different competencies, communication competencies, leadership. What he hadn't practiced in a very long time is in written form, creating an original argument, reading different sources and using those sources to support his original argument. And it had been even a longer time since he had to cite something and make sure that he was citing sources appropriately. And so Draft Coach is really a wonderful tool for students of all ages, whether they're incoming freshmen or new majority students who are returning to the classroom. It is available as in both Google and Microsoft. And you can see here, he's writing his essay, and in real time, checking the similarity report. So here he's able to see in the highlighted text where the highlighted text coincides with the sources that he's used to create his document. He can toggle back and forth, clicking here on the source, and he's able to open the source and see the text along the right-hand side to make sure that he is copying the text appropriately and not changing any words or not taking some text from one part of a source and from another part of a source. So he's really able to go through his text as he creates it. He doesn't have to wait to upload it to the LMS. As he creates it, and it's building his confidence and also taking the guesswork out of what the instructor sees when he finishes the use of Draft Coach and uploads his work to the LMS to be reviewed and revised by his instructor. So Draft Coach first allows students to check their similarity score, click on the source, see the source, check their citation, and assure that they are citing correctly. But additionally, this is a function that doesn't exist in other Turnitin integrity products. He is able to check whether or not all of his in-text citations are appropriately referenced in his reference page and vice versa. So here, he's able to see that his citations are in APA format. If he had a mix of citation styles, it would show it there. That's a huge time saver for students. And he's able to see here that he has a few citations with no references and a few references with no citations. And finally, as he's drafting his paper, he's able to go over 5 different dimensions of language with our automated language feedback. He's able to check his style, the mechanics, grammar, vocabulary, and here in contrast to other products on the market, Turnitin is not giving him the answer. Here it's highlighted. Draft Coach has highlighted different potential areas of opportunity, has signposted it, and then when he clicks here on the wrong article, it will give the grammar rule, a few examples, and then the expectation is that he goes back into his text and corrects the text himself. Will has 3 opportunities to review and revise his work in Draft Coach, and then when he feels ready, he uploads the document to Feedback Studio, which is integrated into the learning management system. And this is where the transparent conversation with his instructor starts. So it's a very similarity score because Turnitin in both Draft Coach and Feedback Studio are comparing student work against the 3 enormous databases, internet sources, student work, and academic journal articles. And so this is where the conversation begins. The instructor is able, just as Will was in Draft Coach, the instructor is able to go into this filter and exclude citations, citations, indented text citations, and the bibliography so that we can really, both of them are able to really narrow their focus and see where potential areas of opportunity in citation exist. And then Will is able to receive the where to next feedback that he needs in order to reach the expectations for his that his instructor has set for him. We have 3 different levels of feedback. So here you can see the rubric scoring. If we were to open this, if we were to click on this X, the rubric would open, and this rubric has been made available to Will and his classmates before they started to write. And they're able to see their performance according to each one of the criterion. It's not here, but you would be able to see the description of each one of the criterion here. But we're also in Feedback Studio allowing professors to give this meso level of feedback. So by clicking here on this button, our professor is able to give voice comments, leave a voice comment for up to 3 minutes, or give written comments like we used to do at the top of a paper. Right? Here's the general comments about the paper. But what Will needs at this stage in life, at his 35 years old, is precise feedback in the moment of his document that he most needs it. And this is the wonderful value of quick marks. Professor has created a system of quick marks that align with the criteria in the rubric, and then can just drag and drop, big time saver for her also, drag and drop to the to signpost exactly what should be changed, either highlighting best practice or areas of opportunity. And we can see one here, explain the connections. Now our professor has created descriptions for each one of these quick marks before the assignment, but she can also go back and amend them, giving extra information here. But look at the value of this. So explain connections. The reasoning that you include should effectively explain how your data and evidence support your claim. Not in general, but in this moment of the essay. And that is just very valuable to students. So we have the quick marks, but drilling down a little further, the instructor is able to strike out text, write in the text, create bubble comments. And Feedback Studio, with these 3 levels of feedback, the rubrics at the most macro level, the voice comments and the general comments, as well as these quick marks and in-text comments, really provide a system that accompanies the student toward reaching the expectation of the assignment. And here, we provide data also for the professor so that she can reflect on the teaching and learning process. So there is data for each student's submission in an assignment according to a stoplight system of similarity. So from 0 to 24% is 1 to 24% is one color, 25 to 50% is another color. So she can strategically differentiate instruction within the classroom. And also, she's able to access data about how many times a certain quick mark had to be given across students in a given assignment, which really allows data to be able to help her reflect on the teaching and learning process and empower students to do their very best original writing. Howard, now I'll turn it over to you in Gradescope.
So I joined the team here almost exactly a year ago from Purdue University. So I was a Big Ten colleague where I served as a senior educational technologist. So before I get started, I always like to give that and say that. And so my history with Gradescope goes back about 5 years when we at Purdue brought Gradescope onto campus. I served as the person whose main job was to work with faculty on it. So when I tell these stories that I collect from faculty, these are real stories from the classroom. So let's go. Next slide, please. So I'm going to start with a little bit of an overview of what Gradescope is. So Gradescope is a grading and feedback platform that allows instructors to use the existing assignments and exams to grade and provide feedback to students in half the time, whether your assessments are paper-based, whether you're doing them online or code-based. But we really want to talk about paper-based assessment. We know there's a lot of fields where paper-based assessment is what's necessary now. The LMS doesn't allow for things like complex math equations with proofs, chemical expressions, drawings, graphs, that sort of thing. And so we still need to do paper-based assessments in a lot of fields. And we know that process is tedious, takes a lot of work to actually get to the grading process. Next slide, please. So I'm going to tell the story of Alex. Alex is a course coordinator for one of the course coordinators for one of our introductory stats courses. It's required for all engineering students. And so this is a large class, 15 sections a semester. And because the growth and demand of these courses, class sizes continue to balloon. And she's talking about 75 to 125 students in each of those sections. So we're talking 1,200 to 1,500 students almost every semester in those classes. Most of the sections are taught by clinical, so non-tenure track instructors, advanced graduate students, and so folks that aren't always teaching the same material. They don't have a long history of teaching this course. In some cases, this will be the only year, the only semester they teach the course. And so she creates the materials, and the students take the same materials, same exams with different instructors. So because of that course build, Alex has often had to field complaints from students and in some cases from parents that exams are graded unfairly from section to section, that some sections are better taught than others. And so her big thing was, how do I grade at scale? How do I balance the grading while giving her, as the course coordinator, the person building the course, more insight into how students are doing on the material, but then also across section. Next slide, please. So Alex started by building a master course in Gradescope, and we're going to talk about what that means in a few minutes. But she would build a course that would have all of her assessments. She would then add all of her instructors and TAs into the master course. Then she would go and distribute her materials out to all 15 courses. Click next, please. One more time. And so each instructor taught their own work, did their own homework, graded their own homework using a rubric that she built herself before assigning it out. And then for exams, they did it collectively. Now, there's actually been an update to this. Gradescope in December, for those of you who are familiar with it, rolled out a sectioning tool. So she's now, this semester for the first time, doing this all in a single course in Gradescope with divisions by sections. But I like to give the fair view. She hasn't done this one yet, so it's not exactly a proven usage. But what this allows her to do is compare grading across all sections using the same rubric, see how the instructors are grading, but more importantly, for things like exams, they did communal grading. So one person doing horizontal grading, so grade by question, which is how Gradescope's set up. One person graded question 1 for all the sections. One person graded question 2 for all the sections. So there's no more variety between, well, this instructor's a little bit harder, so they graded their students harder. Now the same instructors are grading across every section. Next, please. Now, Gradescope allows for a lot of assignment types. We're really focusing today on this idea of a paper-based assessment, so our homework or exam type. But I also want to mention we do allow for code assignments, for bubble sheets, for online assignments, if those are what you need. Okay. The great thing we saw about Gradescope is that there's a lot of benefits to our faculty and instructors. The first one is they had a better way to provide feedback, and we're going to see some examples of that in just a minute. There's better statistics on student performance on paper-based assessments. You know, right now, if you do any paper-based grading, there really is no way to collect that collective feedback, right? You can't compare across all those papers unless you're sitting there and recording your marks on another document, and then you're adding a lot of time to the process. There's a lot of flexibility in the types of assignments you're doing, and you have flexibility with the rubrics, and we'll talk about that too in just a minute. You know, at the institutional level, obviously that ability to adapt to smaller classes, bigger classes, multi-section classes can help. And because horizontal grading is faster, so you guys know this, right? If I grade the same question over and over again, I'm going to see trends. I'm going to be faster at grading. And so there's a time saving. So often it means fewer TAs required. You know, I always like to think of the organic instructor who once told me, well, I get to use one fewer student for grading. I could put them in the lab to help set up the next week's lab or the next day's lab. And that's more time that she then can do her own work instead of trying to do that piece. And obviously we integrate with your LMS to allow for grades and roster upgrading. And there's a student benefit to that feedback as well. Students get clearer, more detailed feedback on how they're doing in the course. We have a regrade process that allows the, students to have an easy system for saying, hey, I think I need you to revisit this question. Here's why. And the instructors should do that. And because we have a Gradescope app for homework, when students go to submit it, they're just taking their phones, scanning and uploading it. So no more instructors spending 5 minutes at the start of class collecting paper-based homework, spending 5 minutes handing it back the following class. So let's talk about our rubrics. So Gradescope allows for 3 types of rubrics, or really 2 types, negative rubrics and positive rubrics, and then also grid rubrics, which is the last thing. Negative rubrics allow instructors to deduct points for mistakes. So what you're seeing on the right here is one of our Gradescope rubrics. The instructor can build the rubric out to reflect the mistakes they anticipate students are going to make on the problem, or as they're grading, they can add new items for every mistake they see. And so this is often best used for assessing problems where there's a really clearly defined, here's what the final answer is supposed to be, here's the process that you should be taking to solve it. So we're thinking math equations, some of our engineering solutions, financial proofs, those sorts of things. And then deductions can be directly connected to errors on the student work. So the instructor builds out the rubric, puts in the point value, and when they're grading, all they have to do is just click on those numbers on that you're seeing next to the deduction, so 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it'll apply that deduction, whatever that point is, to the student. Now, you can have rubric items that include a clear description of what the correct thing should be, which is the one I'm using here from an engineering exam. You can have things like math error, calculation error, or wrong formula, sort of more generic deductions. You can also include what you're seeing here is LaTeX. So if the instructor wants to show what the equation should look like, you can include markup. You can use images in these. So, for example, if there's a labeling thing, the students are supposed to label pieces of a heart in a vet med course. You can have the images for what each of the labels is supposed to be. The really nice thing is that these rubrics are adaptive. I mentioned you can add rubric items as you go along. You see new mistakes you didn't anticipate. You see problems. More importantly, you can adjust the scoring as you go along. So I'm halfway through and I see that a lot of students made the same mistake. I can change that 2-point deduction to a 1-point deduction and give students more credit essentially for a place where maybe the instruction wasn't well done, or maybe the question was a little bit confusing. Now let's go talk about positive rubrics. We often see positive rubrics used more in our social sciences and humanities, but I have seen increased usage in science and engineering. Positive rubric items are often connected to demonstrating certain skills, proving knowledge, or showing that the students have demonstrated a learning objective for the assignment. We often see these used with like portfolio projects or larger projects rather than simple exams. And what you're seeing here on the right is actually two things happening. One is our positive rubrics. So the students start with 0 points and gain points for demonstrating skills. But this instructor also chose to use our rubric groups, which means they cataloged or categorized each of the rubric items into specific areas of concentration. So the efficient use of tools for statistics, using accurate scientific or mathematical concepts. And so all the points under those categories reflect to that category. And the students would see this when they see their score, just like you're seeing on the right. They'll see that they got the 2 points and they'll see how they earned those 2 points. They see they got the 4.5 points and how they earned those points. We can also set these for a select one. So you could have like a 1 point, 2 point, 3 point, 4 point scale and just choose one of those. That then translates into our grid rubrics. So this is actually sort of a hidden feature in Gradescope because it is officially still in beta, so it's something you have to request, but we do allow you to create rubrics based on what we consider sort of the standard grid. When we say rubrics, I think this is a lot of my friends, I come from writing studies, this is what they think of with their rubric. There are some advantages here. Obviously, you're doing the groups still to categorize. Those item groups establish your rows, your categories for what your points are for. And it lets students quickly maybe spot, especially if you're doing a select one, where they fall on a scale. So did they get a 3 out of 4? Did they get a 2 out of 4? Based on the position of what their points were applied as. I really like this, again, in those larger projects because it gives students a sense of where do I have the most growth room? If you're doing a rough draft or a project where there might be an opportunity to revise and resubmit, the students can literally see everything to the right of what I scored are the places where I should be making adjustments. So I really like those grid style rubrics. The output for all of those, though, moves over to our statistics page. And this is where, as a course coordinator and as an instructor, I really love Gradescope. So one of the hardest things to do with paper-based assessment is getting any sort of sense of, besides, anecdotally, well, it seems like a lot of students made a mistake on this one, is saying, where are the areas of improvement? Where do we need to revisit the material to spend more time? And what we see here is the ability to see every rubric item and the value associated directly with it. And you'll see that for every question that you grade in Gradescope. Next slide. And so obviously, I can rave about Gradescope, but they pay me a check. So you might not take me for it, but here's what we're hearing from our users. That Gradescope users see positive feedback from their instructors, if it's course coordinator, or from the students if it's just an instructor level, because grading is faster, grading is clearer. People see exactly how they made mistakes, they get a sense of it. The time savings improves morale for instructors and TAs. Think about it this way. If I can spend 30% less time grading, that's 30% of my time that I can spend on my dissertation work. I can spend prepping my next lecture. I can spend mentoring an undergrad. All those things that people prefer to do over grading, which is, we know this, the worst part of the job of teaching, improves attitudes and morales. We also know that we're seeing an improvement in quality and effectiveness of assessment. we get to see that we get statistics based on every student's performance on every exam, every homework, every quiz, and let that inform the way we're teaching, and leads eventually to more evidence-based teaching, right? We see X, we can do Y. So since I've been talking about assessment so long, I'm going to pass it back to Courtney, who's going to talk about our major assessment tool, Examsoft.
Thank you,
And
Howard.
actually,
Yeah,
Courtney, I'm sorry. Before you get into it, I just want to make a statement about Examsoft. So Examsoft is available at the department level for some Rutgers departments. They're mostly in the medical, nursing, and then there are a couple others across campus. So just want to check with your department to make sure that this is available to you.
Right. Thank you, Gretchen. And Examsoft, thank you, Howard. That was super interesting. So just as in Howard's example, the course coordinator and instructors were trying to assure the quality across their course. Examsoft really empowers department heads and even to assure the quality of their programs longitudinally. So here we've got the story of a department head for a system of universities. And she's committed to the comparability of the quality of teaching and learning across her campuses. She's a little bit worried about the decrease in the student pass rate for the certifications that students take after they graduate or as part of the graduation process. She has an accreditation on the horizon, and she's also just interested in supporting the health of her programs over time. And so what does she need? She needs data. But she needs data that is reliable, efficient to collect within the current processes that she has across her campuses. She needs data that is friendly and easy and suits her purposes. And she needs data that is easy to drill down in. So from that data that allows her to analyze the macro, but also drill down all the way to a student longitudinally across their educational career, or a student in a course, a student in an assignment. And that is really the beauty of Examsoft. And so I'm going to tell you a bit about how Examsoft works as a process, and then we're going to divide our conversation into two pieces: how we get the reliable data that we get, and then what kind of data exists. So an instructor in a department would create their exam questions. These are not paper-based exams. These are exams. These are digital exams that exist within Examsoft in the integration with their learning management system. There's a variety of different question types, multiple choice, bow tie, matrix, true, false, hotspot, and the kind of questions are the kind of items that we allow are constantly evolving. And here the interesting part is that the instructor can tag the question. It can create as many categories and as many tags for the questions as they would like, or as the department head asks for. Okay? And so once the exam has been created, the student then in their class will download the exam. These are highly secure exams that do not take place online. So the student downloads an encrypted exam. And encrypted becomes very important because now the student is unable to share it with other students, therefore the reliability, nor are they able to share it in a way that then it gets put on the internet and shared in abundance, right? So they're going to download the exam. It is encrypted. The student then enters a password that is sent to them, and the exam and then their computer is locked down, and the work is done offline. So what does that mean exactly that their computer is locked down? All programs and secondary hardware are disabled. So there's no screenshots, there's no screensavers. The USB portals do not allow the student to access different information. The internet is obviously blocked, so there's no access to ChatGPT or looking things up online. So that is what there's not. But what is there? Students can take notes, they can highlight pieces of they can use a highlighter and highlight pieces of the questions. instructors can allow calculators at the exam level or graphing calculators at the question level. So it's not only about what they can't do, but what they can do. There's an alarm that doesn't sound, but rather is highlighted in yellow at the top of the screen so the student can administer their time correctly. And then once the exam is done, the student needs a quick internet connection to upload the exam. The exam is deleted from the student's computer, and then the instructor can review reports. There is the option for students to also then see their exam answers and feedback on automated feedback from the very beginning. And so the instructor grades the exam, and then this beautiful array of data is available. Let's talk a little bit more about the reliability of the data. So when students are working offline, what is the value to the institution? There's lower risk of costly disruptions for long exams. Research that Examsoft has conducted says, and also research that we've done online, suggests that students report that their exams are interrupted online up to 30% of the time, right? So there's lower risks of costly disruptions, reduced barriers against equitable access to technology. Students can bring their own device, and the institution has the peace of mind knowing that the exam is saved every 60 seconds. Now, if the institution would like an additional level of security, there are two different add-ons that can be added to the offline assessment. There is Exam ID, which requires an authentication, a photo authentication, and Exam Monitor, which is remote offline proctoring, where the student is the student's computer is again locked down, but also there is a recording happening. And artificial intelligence reviews the video, but also human proctors review the assessment. Review the video. And these kind of reports can be generated and shared with administrators when necessary. If there is a breach of academic integrity, this digital monitoring allows us to insights into the following kinds of behaviors: unnatural hand gestures, off-screen gazes, speaking, suspicious objects, multiple people in the room, and this can become very important for very high stakes assessment. So that is about the reliability of the data and the assurance of academic integrity during the assessment process. So let's go back to the kind of data that our administrator needs to make decisions about the health of her programs and help her curate the data and information that she needs for her accreditation processes. So as we said, when instructors create their questions, they're able to create as many categories and tags as they would like. So what sort of categories and tags, question tags, do we see people using in the institutions that we work in? So you can tag learning outcomes or content, accreditation competencies like professionalism and communication skills, or even things like Bloom taxonomy. So as educators, we say that we want our students to have critical analysis skills, evaluation skills. Now, do we have the data that represents that students are actually acquiring those skills across a course, longitudinally across courses? These categories and tags allow us to see that in real time. So as we said, Examsoft allows for macro data that can then be drilled down to the individual student level data across the student's educational trajectory and in a specific class or even in a specific assignment. So through these tags, our administrator is able to see how curricular standards, performance towards curricular standards are attained over courses, over time, within a specific course. We're able to identify students in need early on in their educational career and give them the support that they need to acquire the skills and the competencies necessary to reach our curricular goals. We're able to identify at-risk courses. We can look at the data at the course level and we can see how a specific course is performing in time or how a specific course has performed over time as we summarize the exam results for each course. Then our administrator can go and sit with her faculty and see how an individual exam, classes are performing on a specific exam towards our larger goals, right? And we can also see how individual students, what their strengths and gaps are on an individual assessment or across time. And this is really empowering, both for the institution and for the student, as we understand where they are situated in contrast to where we expect them to go. Examsoft, Rutgers, in the departments that are using Examsoft, and all of our Examsoft clients count on us as trusted partners every step of the way with our onboarding process and our ongoing support, which includes 24-hour, 7-day-a-week phone, email, and live chat support. And this is just a little bit of what Examsoft can do to help institutions assure the quality of their programs. Gretch, I pass it back over to you.
So with that, we'll pass it back to the group. We left some time for Q&A at the end. If you want to either put your questions in the chat or the Q&A portion, we'll be looking at both. I did see that there was a question, Eric, about Examsoft thanks, Howard. When computers are locked down, we do still have, I put our accessibility statement in the chat just so you can review it, but those are available options for those students who need it, or those exam takers who need it.
Well, we are. Let me talk a little bit more about Gradescope just to fill the silence. So we've been on campus for a while at Rutgers in Gradescope. One of the things to keep in mind is we work across disciplines. But if anyone is working with some group in their department and like to talk through more use cases, I know I sort of showed Alex's story, but I have a variety of use cases I can share from across different disciplines or types of assignments that I'm happy to have a longer conversation with you. I will put my email in the chat and I'm happy to schedule one of those at your convenience because that is what I do and I like it. As I said, I've been with Gradescope almost a year. Sometime next week will be a year, and they brought me on because we went to the point where we were running about 100,000 students, not quite 100,000 students a year through Gradescope at Purdue, and they said, "Hey, come talk to faculty for us." So that is what I do. Oh, Priscilla asked about bubble sheets. So one of the relatively newer features, it's actually been part of Gradescope for quite a while, but I didn't think it was all that usable until about a year ago. Is our bubble sheet replacement. So a lot of schools, for example, who have used Scantron or used other bubble sheets want to be able to do those sort of quick assessments. And having to go through a centralized piece and use dedicated equipment, it's expensive, it's time consuming, it means you're working on somebody else's schedule. Gradescope allows you to set up a bubble sheet in Gradescope, print out a simple blank form that students can circle all their answers on. And really the great thing is you can set your scoring up on a per question basis. So one question, for example, might be a true false. You can make it worth 1 point. The next question may be a select all. So you're going to make it 3 points. The next one might be a standard A, B, C, D, E, and you'll make it worth 2 points. So you can have that sort of scoring. The other thing about our bubble sheet solution is that you don't need anything other than a simple office scanner that I can guarantee you almost every department on campus has, or you may even have at home to scan them in bulk and do the auto scoring. You can then even use the rubric tool on top of the bubble sheet. So let's say you want to give extra feedback. So let's say You do a multiple choice exam, answer A is correct, answer B, C are both really wrong, and D is going to be incorrect, but only if the students made the same sort of assumption, right? You know how students answered D because they made a particular mistake. You can actually go into the rubric and add written feedback for a multiple choice bubble sheet question. So the students, when they get their score, will not just get their score, but will get actually some clear feedback on how they did on the question. Our statistics include, and this is why I said it wasn't all that viable until somewhat recently, so you get the statistics based on how students did per question, but about this time last year, we started offering also discrimination scores. So this tells you, hey, how did my top students do on this question? How did my worst performing students do on this question? Which gives us an idea of the actual quality of the question, right? If all the students who are getting 100 on everything else missed a question, that might be more about the question than the students. And so you get those sorts of discriminatory score, and you get a breakout on score per question or per answer. So you get that sort of, again, that line item feedback that tells you, is it a problem with the question? Is it a problem with the teaching? Is it a problem with the student performance? I hope that answered your question, Priscilla. Wasn't really a question.
Chat, I just put a couple of resources. The first one is the help article that goes through all of the workflow of bubble sheets and the statistics that Howard was talking about. And then a link for our weekly open workshops. Those are just getting started with Gradescope. So if you did want to pop into one of those sessions, those are open for you. Thank you, Priscilla. We appreciate it.
So yeah, Priscilla, so you're the Gradescope admin. So I mean, I guess that means you get all the questions. But as I said, I was in exactly your job. So I appreciate that.
And if there are no questions, then I thank you all for attending, and especially the three of you for putting on such a wonderful presentation for us today. And hopefully we'll see you again in the future.
Yeah, thanks for having this. I've already sent a couple of screenshots to my former colleagues at Purdue and Michigan State, and was like, this is really well done, and we all should do something similar. So
it's great to hear that feedback.
Well, this was wonderful. I have some links. We put some links in the chat. Thank you very much. But please reach out, email us anytime. We're here to help. So thank you.
Take care, everyone.
Okay.
We steal a few minutes back to do what we need to do before the next sessions begin.
Sounds great. Thanks. Have a good day, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.